The lights dimmed into a red hue, casting shadows on the floor of the club. Sensual music played softly in the background, joined by the tapping of the stripper's heels as she stepped onto the stage. She was beautiful, dressed in a flimsy and translucent material, covering a body that I could only dream to have. She had caught the attention of every spectator, mine included. All pairs of eyes were on the captivating woman, all except one. This particular nightclub was located in the industrial part of town and filled with questionable characters. Newcomers weren't frequent. The man currently looking at me was definitely not a regular. I raised my head, locking eyes with the stranger before averting my gaze back to the woman. He had the body of a fighter. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, exposing the tattoos on his strong forearm. The man was leaning on the railing, both of his hands wrapped around a clear drink. Even though his face was partially hidden by the dark shadows, I could tell that he was handsome, and he looked like he wanted something from me. After a few moments of enjoying the dance and an extra few sips of cognac, I had forgotten about the stranger until the music stopped and I sensed his presence before I saw him. I didn't like the fact that I didn't see him coming. He had stealth and he was there, a mere foot away. I was used to being approached by men, but not the type of man who looked the way he did. He was better looking up close. The finest fucking man I've ever seen. His eyes were dark and his tattoos were darker. Intricate patterns ran down his neck all the way to his fingers wrapped around the clear glass. The ring on his index tipped the ring on his tipped the glass as he sat down next to me, his arms spreading out to lay on the backrest of the sofa, and he made himself comfortable. Bold, I like it. I turned my body to him, crossing one leg over the other. His eyes dropped down to my thighs, taking in the sight of the tattoo on my skin as a smirk formed on his lips. I could tell that he liked what he saw, and he liked it even more when I shifted closer to him. I took his wrist, guided his hand to my face. He watched me carefully, not taking his eyes off me, just as I thought. Water? I asked, retreating my hand. He wasn't acting out of on drunken confidence. He was sober, clear-headed, and the agenda on his face was loud and clear. I don't like drinking, he said, his voice deep, and I wasn't expecting the accent Italian. I chilled down my skin, and it wasn't just because of how good he sounded. He had power radiating off him unlike anything that I've felt before. His knuckles were marked by scars, but covered in black ink. His hands were steady, too steady to be considered normal. The stranger was trained in what? I had no clue. Me too, I replied, taking a sip of my cognac. He smiled at me, showing me the deep dimple on his cheek. The innocent little dent was childlike, something that I didn't expect on a man built like him. What do you want? I asked, deciding to skip all the formalities. I reached over, setting my glass onto the table. I think you know, he whispered lowly, his eyes darting between mine and my lips. The stranger raised his hand, lifting it to stroke my cheek with his knuckles. His eyes were lit with amusement, knowing that I was slowly falling into his trap. My heart rate sped up, and I swallowed away the nerves that I refused to show. He couldn't have known that I wasn't the confident person I was portraying. Fuck. It was my first time talking to a man for longer than 30 seconds in as long as I could remember. I was an internal wreck. Yeah, I said, nearly shivering when his fingertips stroked the skin on the side of my neck. A man, one that I had just fucking met, was succeeding at making my body react to his touch. I didn't even know his name, but I didn't care. My and that That's when I knew that he was the one I wanted to fuck. What's your name? He asked, drawing an unknown pattern on my skin, his eyes following his fingers. What's yours? I asked, inching closer to him. He smelled so good. The stranger grinned, peering at me through sensual eyes. I'm sure I asked first. I don't care, I said, letting my hand rest on his thigh. He was athletic, that much was obvious, but I wondered if the rest of his body was decorated by the dark tattoos. I need to see it. Valerio, he said with no hesitation, catching me by surprise. I was expecting another rebuttal. Valerio. I like that name. I paused, taking a moment to think about it. Really fucking think about it. Did I want to go down this road with him? Did I want to fuck a man and then leave the city the next day and never see him again? I did. Of course I did. Valerio gripped my cheek, gentle but firm enough to face my head into his direction. He bent down when he spoke softly. I want to know the name of the woman I'm fucking tonight. Whoa. Brave. I murmured under my breath. I had never heard a man say anything like that to me before, and I wasn't ashamed to admit that I was enjoying it. The lights dimmed, another dancer stepping onto the dance, and yet again he kept his eyes on me. Hardly, he whispered. Brave would be throwing you over the table and giving everyone a different form of entertainment. I don't think you would want that, do you? He played with my hair, twirling a lock around his tattooed fingers. I took a deep breath in involuntarily, picturing the scene of him pressing face into the glass table and fucking me from behind. The thought was intrusive and too vivid for comfort. I did want that. Brave would be touching your hair, he murmured, letting the back of his fingers graze my collarbone and hair. He moved over to my exposed cleavage, touching the skin softly, and I let him because he was hot. Knowing that all those men are watching, he nodded his hand to the left into the direction of a group of men he wasn't even looking at. They pretended to be occupied when I caught them. Lenny, I said, pushing my inhibitions to the side. He chuckled, his dark eyes swelling with lust. Beautiful name. Alani, he repeated, testing it on his tongue. My name had never sounded that good. Brave would be. He paused, caressing the hem of my dress. His eyes met mine, flickering to my lips just for a moment, and I saw the question. I thought about it again. I decided to let loose for one night, so I nodded. Valerio didn't wait. He saw the opportune moment and wasted no time in grabbing me by the waist. I'm going to kiss you, Eleni. With his hand clasped under my ear, he leaned forward and kissed me. I barely had time to comprehend it, but I let my body relax. His lips were full, soft, and felt so fucking good that I couldn't help but let out a breath among. It had been so long since I was kissed, and it shouldn't have felt as earth-shattering as it did. Valerio grabbed my jaw, angling my head to deepen the kiss. Currents of pleasures packed through me, straight to my fucking clit, and I had to squeeze my thighs together. I was already wet, and he had barely touched me. Fuck, he whispered, his lips not leaving mine. If your kisses feel like this. I trailed off, his big hand holding my hips, and he gave me a small massage. I smiled against him, getting one taste, and wanting more and more. I grabbed the back of his head, pushing his mouth further into mine. He was a good kisser. It was dark when I pulled away, but light enough for me to see the erections raining against his pants. It was hard between his legs, pressed down his thigh and clothed but by a thin material. The size of him almost scared me. what the fuck was I supposed to do with all that? Valerio licked his lips, and it was evident that the kiss had left him a little dazed. For a Superman, his eyes were pretty low. It felt good to know that I wasn't the only affected. In fact, he seemed a bit more touched than me. You taste good, he whispered, and then he kissed my neck, and I was convinced if we were alone, my clothes would have been long gone. My heart rate was still haywire, and my mind was whirling with too many thoughts for understanding. But beyond all of that, I knew I was going to live with this man. Just like that, I became putty in his hands to mold and to use however he wanted, as long as I got an orgasm from him. I had no issue delving into unknown territory. Valero really retrieved his wallet and pulled out a few notes. He set it on the table, and I realized that he was paying for my drink that I hadn't finished. He stood up and held a hand out for me. When I let my palm touch his, I knew that there was no going back. There was a silent agreement between us as he led me through the masses of the club, guiding me through the bodies and making sure we didn't bump into anyone. I followed him mentally preparing myself for whatever he had in store for me. This book is called, I have no idea. Let me check. Fuck. Why is my phone acting up? Okay, the book is called A Touch of Sin, written by only Shannon. It's on Wattpad. I don't know if it's on any other platform, but it seems amazing. I haven't read it yet. That was just the first chapter.